members and guests, a warm welcome to you all to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. Today is Tuesday, the 27th of February 2024, and it has just gone 1 o'clock. This meeting is a virtual meeting on Microsoft Teams, but also available to follow on YouTube. Honourable members, can I first just introduce myself? I'm Andrigus van der Westhuizen and privileged to be chairing this committee and this meeting. And with that, honourable members, I would like to hand over to you to just first introduce yourself. This is first the members, and then we'll also give an opportunity for the guests to introduce themselves afterwards. Honourable members, over to you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. It's Derek America. I'm a member of the committee, and good afternoon all.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kayla Murray, member of the committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Peter de Villiers, member of the committee.
Thank you very much, honourable members. That means that we are quorate. May I then first ask our government officials who have joined us from various departments to also introduce themselves. First, the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, please.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, honourable members. Gerard Gerber, Head of Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning.
And you are being joined by some of your colleagues, Mr. Gerber?
Yes, I'll ask that they introduce themselves, maybe in the sequence as per the people in attendance on the right-hand side. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson. I'm Anique Rousseau, and I'm also from the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning.
Next is Hussein.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. Hussein Isaacs, Director Climate Change.
Good afternoon, Chairperson members. Lisa Jennings-Boom, also from the Climate Change Directorate in Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Can I hand over to the Department of Agriculture? I saw we have a representative from that department as well.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and honourable members. Dr. Ilse Trautmann. I'm the Deputy Director General for Agricultural Research and Regulatory Services, and also responsible for driving the climate change portfolio in the department. I do apologise for some of my colleagues not being able to attend today. They're out on a assessment tour and other meetings, so I will be representing the department. I do apologise that I will have to jump out of this meeting for a very short time later on and jump right back. I just would need to attend a quick other meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and a warm welcome to you, Dr. Trautmann, as well. I see the Department of Mobility is also present.
Good afternoon, everyone, Chairperson and members. My name is Bradley Peterson. I'm from the Western Cape Mobility Department in the Mobility Policies and Strategies Unit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then it's always a pleasure to welcome our colleagues from the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. And I wonder if Mr. Ramaru is online and whether he would like to introduce the other members.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair. Indeed, Chair, my name is Laura Maru. I'm the Chief Director responsible for climate change. Honourable Chair, I am with colleagues from the department. I'm going to ask them to do a very quick introduction, and maybe starting with Mr. Swisiso Kovese.
Good afternoon, honourable members and colleagues. I'm Sibusiso Kovese from the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, from the Directorate Law Reform. Thank you.
Can Ms. Tolle, followed by Mr. Luate, do the introduction quickly, please?
Good afternoon, honorable members and colleagues. My name is Mikate Positole. I'm responsible for climate change monitoring and evaluation, impact and adaptation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, honorable members and colleagues. My name is Victor Loate, also from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. I am the Director responsible for atmospheric policy, regulations and planning. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Cindy Siwe-Mashele, followed by Mr. Mabena.
Good afternoon, honorable members and colleagues. My name is Sindisiwe Mashale, also from the department under the Climate Change Mitigation Unit, responsible for climate change, MNE, GHG, inventory and systems.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members. My name is Samuel Mabena, also from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, from the Chief Directorate Climate Change Mitigation and Specialist Monitoring Services. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Comfort, do you want to go? I think you'll be the last.
Good afternoon, honorable members and colleagues. I'm also from the department under the Directorate Law Reform.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. This is the team that will be taking you through the bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khamaru. From the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, I see a number of our support staff as well. First in line, Ms. Shireen Niekerk, our procedural officer. But then we also have a number of ICT staff that would be able to assist people that may be experiencing challenges. Ms. Candice Morris has joined us in that regard. But then also we normally have our legal advisor with us as well. And a warm welcome to you, Advocate Marsdorp. Thank you very much for joining us and assisting us with all the legal aspects of this bill. Can I now give over to our guests and people that are going to present to us that have joined us. Again, I hope that most of you would be able to see the column to the right of your computer screens. And if that is the case, the highest up on that list is Mr. Nicholas Dias. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair. Nicholas Dias, a State Law Advisor from the Department of the Premier's Legal Services Department. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much and welcome. Thanks for joining. Can we now ask that the other members, those of you that do see your name there in that column, please try and follow the order. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cedric Lutte. I'm from the Western Cape Department of Infrastructure in the unit Infrastructure Strategies and Long-Term Planning. Okay.
Thank you.
Greetings, everybody. I'm Gabriel Claassen from Project 90 by 2030 Civil Society organization making an oral presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Jason Cleofas, Procedural Officer in the NCOP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Ms. McCaskill.
Yes, sorry about that. My name's Natalie McAskill, and I'm trying to get Lucinda Jaftis, who's on the program, to join. So she's having a bit of technical difficulty. I'm sorting it out, but she's on her way.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure that from the Western Cape Provincial Parliament's ICT team, they will also be reaching out to her. You can just in the chat perhaps communicate with them. Can we go further down the list? Thank you. It seems then that this is the list for now of people that would like to introduce themselves. Also then always a warm welcome to Ms. Mshumpela, who is also assisting from the Western Cape Provincial Parliament's side. Good. Honourable members, today on our agenda, we have a briefing by first the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment on the Climate Change Bill, B9B of 2022, which has been referred to us via the NCOP. And then afterwards, there will be some presentations, oral submissions by Project 90 by 2030, an oral submission by Ms. Lucinda Jeftas. So we sincerely do hope that she would be able to join us soon. And thereafter, there will be an opportunity for questions, etc., for clarification. So this is what we have on our agenda for this afternoon, honourable members. Therefore, can I first hand over to the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment on the Climate Change Bill. And I don't know, Mr. Khamaru, if you would like to go first. I believe Mr. Kubesi is going to be presenting the presentation to the meeting.
Indeed, Honourable Chair, I think we can give Mr. Gobes an opportunity just to run through the presentation, just to indicate that the climate change bill has been long in the making, Honourable Chair, and it has gone through a series of consultation, including the Portfolio Committee, and as you have indicated, it's now on the NCOP for further consideration. Thank you, Honourable Chair. Mr. Gobes.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Kubesi, we do see your presentation on our screens, so please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon again to honourable members and colleagues. Mine is to take you quickly through the presentation on the climate change bill. In terms of the structure of the presentation, we'll be taking you through a few items: the purpose and objects of the bill, the principles, key definitions, the processing of the bill by the Portfolio Committee, the key amendments or summary of amendments made on the bill by the Portfolio Committee, policy alignment and institutional arrangements, climate change response. This talks to the responsibilities of provinces and municipalities, the national adaptation to impacts of climate change, sector adaptation to impacts of climate change, and the last item will then cover the greenhouse gas emissions and removals. So that's how the presentation is structured, Chair. In terms of the purpose of the bill is intended to enable the development of an effective national climate change response and a long-term just transition to a low-carbon and climate-resilient economy and society within the context of sustainable development. That's the purpose of the bill. Chair, the next slide is about the objects of the bill. The detailed objects are contained in the bill. We thought let's just extract a few in this presentation. But the main objects of the bill include the provision, the fact that it's intended to provide for a coordinated and integrated response by the economy and society to climate change and its impacts, provide for effective management of the inevitable climate change impacts by enhancing adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience, and reducing vulnerability to climate change.
Okay, good.
Make a fair contribution
I couldn't hear
to
from
the
the side.
global
Okay,
effort.
thanks.
Sorry, I was disturbed there a bit.
Yes, please proceed. I trust it may be the member that's just, or the person that just joined us. But please, everybody, we are a big group, so please keep your microphones on mute until you have given an opportunity to participate. Mr. Kubesi, apologies for that, and please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was still at on the objectives. But just to summarize, Chair, the objectives are in the bill, but the last one we wanted to highlight is that the bill seeks to ensure a just transition towards a low carbon economy and society, considering the national circumstances. So in summary, those are the objects of the bill. We thought we should also highlight at a high level the principles that are principles of the bill. Same here, the bill contains quite detailed principles, but here we'll just summarize a few. What is key to note here, Chair, is that this bill will become a specific Environmental Management Act. So it will fall under the umbrella legislation, the NEMA. As such, all the principles that are contained in Section 2 of NEMA will apply in respect of this bill. The other key principle is that the climate system should be protected for the benefit of present and future generations of humankind. This is consistent with Section 24 of the Constitution, which enjoins government to take the necessary measures and put legislation in place to ensure that the environment is protected for the benefit of the current and future generations. So this principle is aligned with Section 24 of the Constitution. Another key principle is the acknowledgement that the bill acknowledges international equity and each country's common but differentiated responsibility and capabilities in light of the different national circumstances. Chair, this is quite important, and it talks to equity, which then means that developed countries who have historically contributed more to the emissions over the years must contribute more in terms of the efforts to then fight climate change and ensure that there is effective measures put in place. So it talks to the principle of proportionality to say if you are a major contributed greatly to climate change, then your efforts in reduction or in eliminating climate change should be meshed alike. Another key principle that is noted or highlighted in the bill is a contribution to a just transition towards low carbon, climate resilient, and ecologically sustainable economies and societies, which contribute to a creation of decent work for all, social inclusion, and the eradication of poverty. So in summary, these are just the principles that are highlighted, are contained in the bill. We also wanted to highlight the key definitions. The bill defines quite a number of concepts and terms. I won't really go through each definition. Maybe I can just highlight that one of the key definitions is that of the term nationally determined contribution, which colloquially called the NDCs. The NDCs are at the heart of the Paris Agreement. As you may know, Chair, we are signatories to the Paris Agreement. So the nationally determined contributions are at the heart of the Paris Agreement, and they entail that each country's contribution or commitment towards the reduction of emissions and the adaptation measures that must be taken. So these NDCs are a contribution or a commitment by each country that is a signatory to the Paris Agreement. Chair, this bill has long been in the making. I think it was introduced in Parliament in 2018. So it's been a long way since we've been processing this bill as a department. But in summary, Chair, the Portfolio Committee conducted extensive consultations across the country, physical and virtual public hearings on the bill. we assisted the portfolio committee as a department when it was going around in the different provinces, in all the 9 provinces. The committee, I think it held consultations in at least 3 districts in each province. So we're working with we assisted the committee throughout that elaborate process. The portfolio committee received quite a number of submissions, 101 substantive written submissions, and there was 1,001 composite emails from a campaign called Dear South Africa. So all those submissions were considered by the portfolio committee, and late last year, the portfolio committee considered the comments, deliberated, and we then worked with the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor and the Parliamentary Legal Advisor to generate the A list and the B list, a list of amendments that then went on into the bill. So the bill that we have now before you is quite different from, is markedly different from the bill that was initially introduced way back in 2018, based on the fact that the portfolio committee has taken all the comments or the stakeholder inputs from the public participation process into account. The portfolio committee then approved the bill and referred it to the NCOP Select Committee. That is why we are here to brief the honorable members. We have briefed other provinces already, but some were still to brief others. So, Chair, that's why we are here. This slide was just to highlight that we've been quite busy with this bill. In the following slides, 2 or 3 slides, we just wanted to highlight or put emphasis on the amendments that were made by the portfolio committee, so that as you process the bill, you are then aware of the amendments that were made by the committee, taking into account the input received from the public participation process. The first amendment, Chair, if I may, was on the definitions. The definitions were reviewed. The definitions of the terms National Greenhouse Gas Emissions Profile, Public Finance Management Act, and Resilience were inserted by the portfolio committee. On clause 3, the principles, the wording physically challenged was substituted for the wording persons with disabilities. That was a specific amendment to clause 3F of the bill. The thinking or the feeling was that the word or the phrasing physically challenged was ambiguous, and the committee opted to then use the universally and most acceptable wording, persons with disabilities. On clause 7, the portfolio committee inserted the word laws, as well as reference to traditional leaders and other stakeholders in clause 7.2. So clause 7.1 basically is talking to responsibility of departments to then review their policies, programs, and measures to ensure that there is alignment in implementing the bill. So the word laws was omitted, so that's why it was inserted. Clause 10, the Presidential Climate Commission. I must indicate that this was one of the most contentious clauses of the bill. Most public inputs were around this clause and related clauses to the Presidential Climate Change Commission. If you look at the version that was introduced and the current version that is before you, you'll see the differences, Chair. On this clause specifically, it's been improved markedly. The initial version was lacking in detail, as the public said, so that's why it's been revised substantively. So, Chair, if I may highlight the changes on this clause effected by the Portfolio Committee is that the clause there now provides for continued existence of the Presidential Climate Commission. As you may know, the commission currently exists on the basis of a cabinet directive. So once the bill is enacted into law, the PCC will then continue to exist and be regulated under this act, under this bill once it is put into law. The PCC will then be listed in terms of the Public Finance Management Act as a Schedule 3 entity. There's now provision for the appointment of 25 commissioners by the president. In the other version, there was no prescribed number necessarily. There is provision for the chairing of the PCC by the president. The president will be entitled to appoint a deputy president, a deputy chairperson. The term of office for the commissioners is now prescribed in the bill. It's 5 years, first term renewable once for an additional term of 5 years. Members of Parliament and provincial legislatures will not be eligible for will not be eligible for appointment as commissioners solely on the basis of in fact, to avoid conflict of interest and any political interference with the work of the commission. The commission is now enabled to make its own rules, procedures, and and also develop a code of conduct. So those are the improvements made on clause 10, Chair. On clause 11, which is still on the commission, the functions of the commission, the Portfolio Committee inserted clause 11C, which provides that the commission must advise government on any socio-economic matter related to the just transition. The commission is now also enabled to create committees. These committees are important as they will draw from different expertise, legal, environment, adaptation, climate change, and related fields to make sure that the commission is fully functional and effective. On clause 12, there's now a process of appointment of commissioners is outlined in the bill. It's an open and transparent process, a call for nominations. There will be a gazette put out for people to submit nominations. So every member of society will then have an opportunity to have a say on who should be appointed as a commissioner. The bill now provides for the role of the commissioners as well as their remuneration. Clause 12A of the bill provides for the appointment of the executive director, who will be the accounting officer of the commission. So that's another addition to the bill. Clause 12B was inserted to provide for financial administration of the commission. If you look at that clause specifically, it provides that the commission should be funded from parliamentary appropriations, but the commission will be able to receive monies from donations. The commission must also put in place a funding strategy, which will make sure that its finances it gets the necessary funding. Clause 13 provides that the commission must submit its reports, studies, and strategies, and its recommendation to the National Assembly. So the commission will be reporting directly to the Assembly. But there is a requirement that the copies of the reports must be circulated to the relevant ministries. For transparency, there is a requirement that the reports of the commission must be publicly available. The Commission must publish the reports on their website. We are aware that the Commission currently has a running website, a working website. So all we've added is that is the requirement that its reports must be available in the website. There is also a provision for the Commission's Secretariat, which must be appointed by the Executive Director in consultation with National Treasury. There is also amendments to Clause 15, which provides for publication of the climate change needs and response assessment and implementation plans in the Gazette. And as you will notice, Chair, if you go through the bill, wherever there's reference to timeframes, that is qualified by the wording at least. This is done to allow for timeframes for a minister or the relevant stakeholders who are impacted by the timeframes to be able to, for example, submit the reports within the prescribed timeframes or before that the prescribed timeframes. There is a new insertion as well on the bill around the finance mechanisms. This was one of the key areas of discussion in the Portfolio Committee. So Minister now is empowered to prescribe a mechanism to support and finance the Republic's climate change response, planning and implementation at the national, provincial and local government level. Such funding mechanisms will then be developed in consultation with the Minister of Finance. In respect of the emissions trajectory, the bill provides for the use of the latest updated nationally determined contribution, which will then serve as the trajectory. The previous version of the bill was saying the national trajectory was prescribing a national trajectory based on the white paper of 2011. So that trajectory was a bit outdated. This was highlighted by stakeholders, and that's why it's now being corrected to say the latest updated national NDC will serve as a trajectory. As a result, Schedule 3, which was prescribing the old outdated trajectory, has now been deleted. In respect of the regulations making clause, you will notice that, Chair, that there are certain regulations that must be tabled in Cabinet for adoption. This includes the regulations relating to certain, the funding mechanisms. So the Portfolio Committee felt that those regulations are quite key, and Parliament must have input before those are finalized. Then on offences and penalties, from the previous version, Chair, you'll notice that the offences and penalties clauses were quite thin. It was just 1 or 2 liners, but 2 lines clauses, but you'll realize that now we've really reworked the penalties and offences provision, offences and penalties clauses. They have much more detail in the current version. So there's been that provision, that clause was revisited. On Schedule 2 reporting, Schedule 2 was also amended by addition of certain functionaries: education, cooperative governance, traditional affairs, technology, and tourism. Those are the functionaries that will be responsible for development of sectoral emission targets. The arrangements clause was also reworked, taking into account the changes that were effected by the Portfolio Committee. So, Chair, in summary, those were the changes that were effected by the Portfolio Committee. The next slide, Chair, talks to the policy alignment and institutional arrangements, which is slide 11. Here, Chair, the key thing here is that we didn't really want to reinvent the wheel or to duplicate effort or to create new structures. But the idea here is that the existing structures, intergovernmental relation structures as established by the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act, must be used to then drive climate change objectives. What the slide says, Chair, is that the Premier's Intergovernmental Forum, as well as the district intergovernmental forums, which are existing forums established in terms of the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act, must serve as forums for climate change. And those forums are enabled to create technical support structures. Then within those technical support structures, then there will be sufficient representation from all sectors of society, including labor, business, traditional leadership, communities, to ensure that there is sufficient representation in those forums. So that's what the slide is all about, Chair. The next slide on institutional arrangements or policy alignment and institutional arrangements is on the Presidential Climate Commission. I've highlighted already the changes effected by the Portfolio Committee to improve the provisions or the clauses related to the Commission, its continued existence, the fact that the Commission will then be listed as a Schedule 3 entity in terms of the PFMA. But on this slide, it's just to emphasize that the Commission will be independent, impartial, an independent and impartial structure with its own legal persona listed in terms of Schedule 3 of the PFMA, with representation from different sectors of society, including government, civil society, labor, traditional leadership, as well as SALGA. And its main functions are highlighted in the next slide, Chair, which are advisory in nature. The Commission will then advise on the Republic's climate change response, advise government on the mitigation of climate change impacts, as well as on any other socio-economic matter related to the just transition. What is key to note as well is that the role of the commissioners is now outlined in the bill, which is also advisory. The commissioners will be advising the Commission on the Republic's climate change response, mitigation measures, as well as adaptation measures as well. So the next slide, Chair, is on the climate change response, the role of provinces and municipalities. Chair, here, the key thing to note is that there is a requirement for the minister to develop a national adaptation strategy and plan within 1 year of a promulgation of the Act. So in respect then of the role of provinces and municipalities, what the bill says is that from the date the strategy and plan, the national adaptation strategy and plan is finalized, municipalities must undertake climate change needs and response assessments within the prescribed timeframes. After the assessments, they must then develop climate change response plans. Those plans will be key in terms of integration, and such plans must be part of the integrated development plans of the provinces and municipalities. So this is what this slide, Chair, emphasizes. Minister must then prescribe a mechanism to support and finance the provinces and municipalities. The next slide is on national adaptation to impacts on climate change. This talks to the role of national in relation to climate change. What this slide says, Chair, is that the minister must, within 1 year of promulgation of the Act, determine national adaptation objectives by notice in the Gazette. The objectives must be supported by indicators which will assist with measuring progress towards achievement of the national adaptation objectives. Minister must also, within 1 year of coming into operation of the Act, develop adaptation scenarios which will anticipate the likely impacts of climate change in the Republic and associated vulnerabilities over the short, medium, and longer term. The minister will then be, in consultation with other ministers, develop, as I said, a national adaptation strategy and plan, and publish that in the Gazette within 2 years of coming into operation of the Act. Then if we go on to slide 16, Chair, this slide is about the sector adaptation to impacts of climate change. So after Minister has developed the National Adaptation Strategy and Plan, the bill provides for development of sector-specific strategies and plans. So the responsible ministries, ministers responsible for certain sectors and subsectors must develop sector-specific strategies and plans, and those will be informed by the needs assessments, climate change needs and assessments that would have been conducted. Those ministers will then, every 5 years, be responsible for reviewing those sector-specific strategies and plans and report on progress to the minister. Minister, in turn, will be required to collect, compile, and synthesize the information received from the reports from different sector ministers and develop a synthetic adaptation report and submit that report to Cabinet. Then the Cabinet endorsed synthesis as adaptation report will then be used by the country to inform its engagement at the international level. The slide 17, Chair, is about the greenhouse gas emissions and removals. In summary, Chair, this slide says that Minister will be responsible for determination of the national greenhouse gas emissions trajectory. To the extent that that trajectory is not in place or gazetted by Minister, then the latest updated NDC, National Determined Contribution, will serve as the trajectory. Then the other bullets talk to the sectoral emission targets. Minister, in consultation with other sector ministers, will then determine the sectoral emission targets. The sector ministers will then have to develop or adopt policies and measures that towards the achievement of the sectoral emission targets as set by the minister. So that's what the other two bullets are saying, Chair. Then if we move to the next slide, is 18. Those responsible sector ministers will then be required to annually report to the presidency on the progress towards the achievement of the sector emission targets that were set by the minister. Minister will in turn be required to collate, compile, and synthesize the information received from the sector ministries and generate a report for submission to Cabinet on the sector, on progress relating to sector emission targets or attainment of the sector emission targets. Chair, if I may, in terms of the listed greenhouse gases and activities, the Minister will publish by notice in the Gazette the list of activities, the list of greenhouse gases as well as the activities that which Minister reasonably believes will cause or are likely to cause or exacerbate climate change. So that Minister's responsibility in terms of the publishing the list, firstly of the greenhouse gases as well as the related activities. On carbon budget, Chair, the Minister will allocate carbon budget to any person that conducts a listed activity. The person to whom a carbon budget has been allocated must then prepare a greenhouse gas mitigation plan. At the time when the carbon budget is assigned for the first mandatory carbon budget cycle, all the approved pollution prevention plans provided for in terms of the Air Quality Act and the National Pollution Prevention Plan regulations will be deemed to be the greenhouse gas mitigation plans. So this is to allow for smooth transitioning to the new regime once the Act is put in place. The Minister will then be enabled to review the carbon budget allocated to a person at the end of the 5-year carbon budget commitment period, or as requested by the person to whom a carbon budget was allocated. Then on slide 20, Chair, I think this is the last slide, which is about the phasing down or phasing out of synthetic greenhouse gas emissions and declarations. In summary, Chair, what this slide says is that Minister will be empowered in consultation with other responsible ministers to declare certain greenhouse gases as synthetic gases. And in that gazette, specify whether such gases should be phased out or phased down, and determine the threshold for the use of those synthetic gases. And most importantly, Minister will then determine the timeframes for the phasing out or phasing down of those synthetic gases. So synthetic gases, I think, should be the most dangerous gases, which will either be phased out over time or phased down progressively over time as well. So Minister will then develop a phase down or phase out plan, and is empowered to or is enabled to review the plans every 5 years. And lastly, on the phasing down or phasing out, Minister may allocate carbon budgets for to persons undertaking activities that give rise to emissions relating to the synthetic or to the declared synthetic greenhouse gases. The last bullet, Chair, is about the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory. The Minister will then establish an institutional arrangement to facilitate a national system of data collection for the creation of the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory and annual compilation of the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory report. That is the last slide, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kubesi. I'm grateful for this presentation. Honourable members, as you will recall, we had this presentation scheduled for last year on the 29th of November, but unfortunately the briefing to the relevant NCOP Select Committee, which we were invited to, was postponed to this year due to officials being invited to the COP29 United Nations Climate Change Conference. And that is why that briefing could not take place. But Mr. Kubesi and others, what we did as a committee, knowing that we will be under severe time pressures in 2024, we then already called for public input and comments on this bill. So we considered the marine pollution, the prevention of pollution from ships amendment bill, as well as this one. We paid for advertisements in all three of the official languages of the Western Cape, inviting members of the public to respond on either of the amendment bills. And the closing date for comment was the 5th of February 2024. We also circulated stakeholder letters to what we believe may have been affected stakeholders, and the WCPP, the Provincial Parliament Stakeholder Management and Communication Section, was also requested to tag specific stakeholders when posting on Facebook. We also advertised on our social media platforms, including Western Cape Provincial Parliament website, Instagram, Twitter, and the Facebook page. And we also paid for Facebook advertising. This resulted in 9 written submissions and 1 WhatsApp message. And also we were then contacted by Project 90 by 2030, who then requested us also for an oral presentation. And I'm wondering whether we couldn't go straight into the oral presentation and leave questions for afterwards. I hope you would be able to stay on, Mr. Kubesi.
Oh, no, thank you, Chair. I raised my hand. I wanted to get clarity because as the department, we received a matrix of comments from the committee. We have looked into that.
Yeah.
We have provided responses to the matrix, and we're seeking direction, Chair, whether we will be required to present on the matrix today. But our proposal, Chair, was that, in fact, if I may, Chair, we have looked at the matrix, provided the comprehensive responses, but in addition to that, we have a summarized version of our responses, which we discussed with the state law advisor and the parliamentary legal advisor. So I'm wondering if, with your permission, Chair, if we may be allowed to maybe to take you through the summarized version of our responses for the benefit of all the members.
Yes, Mr. Kubesi, that is indeed on our agenda, but normally what would have happened was that one would have received all the written comments as well as the oral submissions. Then you would have been asked to respond to that, which you've now already done. So I just for this meeting want to try and maintain that order, where we first get all the input, and then we will get your comments on the input that we've received. Obviously the written input, but now also today the oral inputs, should you wish to add anything. So that's why I asked whether you would be able to remain on, linked into this meeting, so that you can later, once we've had the oral submissions, then there will be a question and answer session, and then you would be able to present that matrix, if that is fine with you. I take silence as concurrence.
We'll remain on, Chair. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Kubesi. So now I want to hand over to Project 90 by 2030 for your oral submission. I don't know if you also wish to beam your presentation onto our screens, but over to you.
Thank you very much. Greetings, everybody. I'll get started and then I believe Ms. Jafta will make her own presentation, as they are two separate presentations. My name is, let me just turn my camera on so that you can see that I am a real individual. Hello, turning the camera off. My name is Gabriel Claassen from Project 90 by 2030. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to make a oral presentation and submission here today. And I'll be sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see it. Can I please get confirmation?
Indeed, visible.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You may want to put it, yeah, there, that's it, in presentation mode. Thank you.
So Project 90 by 2030 is extremely grateful for the opportunity to make an oral submission today, presentation today, shall I say, and also grateful for the reiteration of the process in which submissions and of all like will be considered by you today, Chair. Who is Project 90 by 2030? We're a social and environmental justice organization inspiring and mobilizing South African society towards a sustainably developed and equitable low-carbon future by means of a just energy transition. We were established in 2007 in a time where the impacts of climate change were becoming evident for the first time in a more kind of visible lens. We are a change-focused organization aiming to inspire and bring about significant positive change in the way that we engage with Earth systems and each other. We work with stakeholders and decision makers to identify policies and actions that support climate justice with a specific focus on developing environmental leadership in our youth, increasing people's ability to engage government through active public participation to address climate change, energy poverty, and the social injustices that intersect. Our main points for today that we'd like to highlight, of course, not wanting to derail too far from our current submission that we've also had in via email, but wanting to really highlight a few points that we wanted to emphasize on is that the climate change bill is one of the most important draft laws in South Africa. The current bill does not reflect the urgency of the situation of the climate crisis, and that the climate change bill needs to ensure transparency. And lastly, but not least, is that the climate change bill needs to ensure meaningful public consultation. So the climate change bill, which is one of the most important draft laws in South Africa. So climate change is an existential threat to South Africa, and therefore urgent climate action is needed. The fact that South Africa is proposing a law that deals with climate change is a very positive sign, and we welcome it as civil society working in the space. There's a massive need and a massive call for this bill. The legislation creates a need for legal basis to support the transition towards a low carbon economy. And I'd like to highlight, even though it's not on my presentation, that by transition, we mean just transition, one that is equitable, that is fair, and that takes into consideration a holistic approach to justice. We would like to congratulate the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment and other individuals and involved stakeholders in their hard work and tireless effort to realize this climate change bill. The bill as it stands is a big achievement and must be passed into law as soon as possible. The current climate change bill does not reflect the urgency of the situation. There's a need for a clear long-term goal, appropriate timeframes, targets and deadlines for important tools such as carbon budgets and adaptation plans to ensure urgent action. Of course, I've heard in today's submission a few of these things mentioned, but I'd like to go a bit more in detail as we move and like to see a bit more emphasis of this throughout the current standing. The climate change bill needs to contain strong emission reduction targets that are based on the best available and latest science to ensure that we stay within 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming. We call for a clear link to the Paris Agreement. Whilst it was mentioned in the key definitions today, we call for a clear link within the actual policy to the Paris Agreement, and that the temperature goal and commitment to the long-term goal to reach climate neutrality by 2050 to show a sense of urgency. Our second point, the current bill, climate change bill, does not reflect the urgency of the situation. We understand that the climate change bill is a so-called framework bill that will be strengthened and enforced through additional various regulations and strategy outlined in the bill. In that case, the additional regulation should have the highest priority and must be drafted as soon as possible. Or as soon as this bill, shall I say, as soon as possible as soon as this bill gets signed off by the president. Clear timelines need to be included in the climate change bill as well. The regulations need to be safe and scientifically sound content, and long-term and interim targets need to be laid out as well. We call for strong language in the climate change bill to ensure that all regulations mentioned in the bill are drafted as soon as possible and that they must be followed. Accompanying this, we also call for transparency around the process of the drafting and implementation, as well as the monitoring and reporting of all of these strategies as well. The climate change bill needs to ensure transparency. The climate change affects everyone, hence transparency and access to information are critically important. We need to be able to see what carbon budgets are in place for emitters, how much they are emitting, and whether they are complying, and if they are on track to reduce emissions at the necessary level for a safe climate. We call for the climate change bill to state that all relevant information needs to be made actively available to all South Africans. Which leads us to our kind of final main point, as mentioned, before I go into comments about the different clauses. The climate change bill needs to ensure meaningful public consultation. We welcome the climate change. We welcome that the climate change bill includes clause 29, which outlines the process for public participation. We would like to remind the standing committee, when looking at this clause, that meaningful public participation can't happen without educating the public before. So it's meaningful and fully informed public consultation, which is the rights of South Africans. Before that, they can submit objections or comments, and that resources, this needs to be factored into account and into the timeline for the process as well. I am very grateful to hear the way in which the bill and the submission period process was distributed across social media and through the different platforms. However, I also think that more practical on the ground processes need to be brought into account, because many spaces and platforms are quite distant for individuals suffering because of the digital divide. The consultation of youth and climate change affected communities should be a specific focus on each public participation process as well. We call for the climate change bill to ensure meaningful public participation and capacity development of the people of South Africa. In regards to clause 2, Chapter 1, Clause 2, on objects of the Act, we call for the inclusion of the long-term goal. South Africa has committed to being carbon neutral by 2050, inclusion of milestone targets for 2030 and 2035 to monitor if South Africa is on track to achieving their goal. For Clause 3 principles, the need to include inequality. Inequality is one of the biggest threats to development, safety, and well-being of South Africa, and needs to be one of our core principles within the climate change bill. Change the G on the need, change the principle G on the need for a risk-averse and cautious approach to be adopted, which takes into account the limits of current knowledge and causes and effects of climate change and consequences of decisions and actions in relation thereto. Replace need for bold and courageous. Replace this with the need for bold and courageous approach to be adopted, because there is sufficient knowledge on the threat, shall I say, and impacts of climate change. For Clause 7, organized labor, civil society, and business are mentioned. We see that it's mentioned that in order to give effect to the principles and objects set out in this act, organized labor, business, civil society, business may advise on the public's climate change response, but we would like it to read as follows: that they will advise on the Republic's climate change response. We'll have a suggestion for an additional clause: the need for details on cooperation between government departments and their roles and functions in implementing the bill. The bill currently gives too much power to the minister alone, and as such, we worry about good governance, transparency, and accountability. there's a need to outline obligations for the Minister to report regularly and comprehensively to Parliament on progress made on all aspects of the climate change bill. In regards to clause 12, on process of appointment, we appreciate the inclusion for public nominations of commissioners, and that the commissioners, we just like to note that the commissioners need to, and must rather, shall I say, broadly reflect the demographics of the Republic. This suggests that a greater representation of civil society, especially youth, need to be on the commission. And so I just wanted to name that and appreciate that adjustment. In regards to clause 21, is an urgent need to mitigate emissions. According to the IPCC 6th assessment report, emissions must be reduced by 45% in 2030. The current Chapter 5 does not show how show the urgency that is needed. We believe the need for clear timeframes and deadlines, as well as safe and scientifically sound targets for national greenhouse gas emissions trajectory. There's a need for long-term and interim emissions targets. The minister must determine those not only in consultation with Cabinet, but with advice from an independent scientific body. In regards to clause 23, science is clear about the list of greenhouse gases that cause and exacerbate climate change, and therefore this list should be clearly outlined in the climate change bill. Thank you very much for your time. I am very appreciative for the opportunity to make a submission.
Thank you, Mr. Claassen. Really appreciate that. May I just ask for confirmation? You also submitted written comments, and I believe those were passed on to the department for their responses. And now, Ms. Nika, perhaps you can just confirm, it's the first time that the department has now seen the oral submission. Is that correct?
On my front, I can let you know that, yes, we did submit this Project 90 by 2030 a written submission, and upon confirmation from the relevant individual in the call today, I'm sure you'll see that this is the first time that this oral presentation is being submitted.
Good, thank you. And I think that will also explain why the order in which I would like us to handle these things are such that, you know, we first get your submission, and then we'll look at the department's response, obviously, to the various submissions that you've made. But again, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Claassen, and thank you very much for your concern for climate change as expressed in your presentation as well. It is highly appreciated. And with that, can I now hand over to Ms. Lucinda Jeftas for your presentation. You are representing the Hillview community.
Hello everyone, I'm Lucinda. I just want to introduce myself as I'm a community activist in Hillview. And I believe that people working on the ground, you know, we sometimes use big words, you know, we don't always understand them. But I want to present about something that has happened in our community about a few months ago, if I can say so, exactly in December. And if I look at it properly, are we really climate ready for something like this, you know? So I'm going to start my presentation now. I'm not sure how to share it, but I'm just going to read it if that's okay with everyone. So the biggest fire in the history of Hillview broke out on December the 24th, 2023. Hillview is known to have fire breakout this time of year, but this was the worst of them all. So many families lost things they worked hard for years to acquire. The fire started on December 24th, 2023. We hear the cause of the fire was due to someone burning copper wire in a hockey to get some money as she had no electricity. She lost control of the fire and ended up burning down the hockey. At that time, there was not a lot of wind, but within seconds, an unexpected wind came and took a wild turn of direction, destroying 180 homes, and these families lost everything. Community members fought the fire until Christmas evening. The saddest part is that the firefighters only came the next morning due to the fire happening in Simonstown, which for me was very, very unrealistic, because we didn't have enough firefighters to come out in our community.
And they were limited on resources as well. I do believe if they had arrived earlier, not so many homes would have been burnt down. I'm very worried about the fact that involved parties such as the fire department and the city of Cape Town was not prepared for something like this. The emergency kits, for example, only arrived a month later, literally, and people had already found means and ways to acquire materials to rebuild their own homes. The worst thing for me at this moment is that there is still no electricity, and it will only be replaced in March, which now we actually got the electricity back. And the excuse was they had lack of funds to replace what was lost in the fire. Because we live in a gang-infested area, this is very dangerous. When temperatures go up
and the weather gets more unpredictable, there is a higher chance of crazy weather happening, like sudden changes in wind. My question is, when are we going to prepare ourselves? This fire was caused by a person, but what
happens when a wildfire breaks out and it's half of Cape Town, affecting not only the poor but the rich as well? And we all will suffer, and we all know that the poor will suffer the most. So when will we be ready? My answer is we must prepare for disasters like this now. Basically, climate change makes the problems in informal settlements worse, like social issues, money problems, and environmental changes. To fix these issues, we need to come up with big plans that focuses on helping most vulnerable
people, people that live in informal settlements, people that has no access to many things like stuff like in where we now had this wildfire breakout. And this means building stronger buildings, making sure everyone has access to things like water and electricity, and involving the community in planning for disasters.
And that's the end of my presentation, but I just want to add a few things as well. Like these people has been living in this informal settlement for a very long time, and they have now come up with a building plan, where fences has been now put up, but like we all know that apparently money got missing, where money came from the city to the contractor, and now the project is being stopped. And that is things worrying for me, because how are we ever going to get to a place where we can
rebuild and build and give people homes that is suitable for them? My thing is always like,
how does the government know what is suitable for me and my family? I know what is suitable for me and my family, and I know what I want to create for my family, a safe space where I know that if a disaster breaks out like this, a fire disaster breaks out like this, that I'll be well prepared,
And so
those are the things that worries me the most, is when are we going to be ready when a big fire should break out? How are we going to be ready in a community like Hillview, where there are sheds being built on each other? There's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to put your stuff, because every walk is on each other. And that is what people did, that they tried to store their stuff by someone else, and within seconds a wind came and it destroyed almost half of that informal settlement, and that is very worrying for me. So I just want to thank everyone that has listened, and yeah, that's the end of my presentation and my comments as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jeftas. Ms. Jeftas, your sound quality varied a lot. At times you were extremely clear, and I could hear you extremely well, but there were times when it was a little bit muffled, and I do hope that the other honourable members were able to follow even better than what I was able to. But thank you very much. It's also clear that you are highly concerned about the effect of climate change, and particularly the effect of fires on your community. And I think I speak on behalf of this committee when I say, we share your concerns in this regard, and we're really grateful that there are people like yourself, that activists that really keep on speaking on behalf of communities and pointing out the hardship, etc., their living circumstances and experiences. Honourable members, can I just first ask if there are any questions at this stage please indicate. Otherwise, I'm going to ask the department to continue to the matrix whereby they submitted their responses to the matrix of issues raised through our public participation process this far. I do recognize a hand. Let me just see. First, the Honourable America. Please, Honourable America.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I just have two questions that I would like to pose to the department. One being, in terms of the processing of the bill, it was stated in one of the slides, I think it's slide 7, that the amended bill was adopted and referred to the Select Committee on Land Reform, Environment, Mineral Resources and Energy for consideration. Now, I just want clarity whether that adoption, was it adopted by the Portfolio Committee and then directly referred to the Select Committee? Where do we stand with the bill? Had it been approved by the National Assembly? And because what prospects exist that the bill will be approved by the NCOP? Because I say this in the light of the first terms program of the NCOP, that only on the 26th of March, then the bill will be considered by the Select Committee, and on the that's either 25th or the 26th of March, and on the 27th, if my memory serves me correct, the NCOP will rise for constituency period, and then will only return mid-April, and we know that there's an election on the 29th of May, and there will be an early rising of the House and the NCOP. Could I just get clarity around that? Because if it happens in that way, that the bill is not being sort of approved in this term, then it will have to be reintroduced in the 7th Parliament, and we have to take the process from the start again. And then the second question, Chairperson, is with regard to the funding of the PCC. It is stated that the funding will come from appropriations from the Treasury, and also opportunities created for the nations, etc. Because firstly, I want to ask whether in the current budget that was stable for the 24-25 financial year, whether such provision had been made in the budget for the PCC for the next financial year, and whether that funding will be independent of the funding from the department to the PCC. Just that sort of clarity with regard to the differences. And then, yeah, that's all I need to know for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable America. I do note the hand of Mr. Carstens, but perhaps if I could just first ask if there are any other members that would like to pose questions. None. Can I ask the department or other officials? I don't know if Mr. Romaru, would you like to nominate people to respond to that? I think the questions regarding the NCOP program, I don't know if Mr. Cleophas is the best suited to highlight that. But first over to you, Mr. Romaru.
No, thank you, Chair. And just to indicate that, Chair, we, of course, received the comments and we treat them with the seriousness that the comments deserve. And naturally, Chair, what would happen is once we have run through the entire engagement across the provinces, we will consolidate all the comments and clearly provide a table of comments and responses and engage very closely with the state law advisor, engage with the legal team in Parliament to then agree on areas of amendments. So as such, as Mr. Gobese indicated, he will touch on some of the, just a summary on some areas, and we are indeed considering in depth the comments that we have received. I wanted to underscore and underline this one, Honorable Chair, so that we also, you understand where we will be coming from, but to give you an assurance that we will go through in detail all the comments that we'll be receiving from this province and from all the other provinces, and there will be a detailed response, a table of response that will be available to all the provinces, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the issue on the NCOP, indeed the bill has gone through the Portfolio Committee. It has gone through to the National Assembly, passed through to the NCOP, and at current is under the auspices of the NCOP. And we, of course, I think the Honorable make mention of the tight time frame. Honorable Chair, we are at the leadership of the NCOP, and we cannot sit and share with you what the prospects are, where we are standing, but we are guided by the NCOP since it's now in the hands of the NCOP, it's in the parliamentary process. We just remain hopeful that we will do what we have to do from our side, and we are hopeful that the bill can really be passed before end of this administration. We can only remain hopeful, Honorable Chair. The control will be within the parliament processes. Honorable Chair, on the issue of funding to Treasury, indeed there is funding allocated for PCC. We can do the verification on the numbers, but just to indicate that once the Presidential Climate Commission becomes an entity, it will be appropriated directly from Treasury. And the Executive Director of the Presidential Commission will therefore become accountable to Parliament on the work that needs to be carried out and accountable in terms of the administrative issues that are associated with the PC. So they will indeed get an appropriation that will be separate from the department, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, let me also address few comments, and my colleagues will come in just to deal with the summary a bit on the comments that we have received. There's a comment around linking the bill with the Paris Agreement, Honorable Chair, and I want to underscore that this has been linked. We are party to the Paris Agreement, and you can see it's been linked by objective, but also the nationally determined contribution, the NDC, contain our targets and responses to implementation of the Paris Agreement. So when we talk about the minister being empowered to develop a trajectory, Honorable Chair, it's a clear indication on how are we going to reduce the emission, what ton at what period, and those targets are going to be clearly articulated in the trajectory, not necessarily in the act itself, because that will, then it will mean if you put a target in the act, once the target do change, it will trigger the amendments of the bill. So when it is in the NDC, when it is in the trajectory, any circumstances that enable the adjustment, whether it's the increase of ambition, it would therefore remain relevant, and the bill will be now enforcing the implementation of the NDC. So the targets are not necessarily written out in the bill, however, they are contained in the NDC, and as such, the bill will enforce the implementation of the targets in the NDC. I thought let me touch on these few comments, Honorable Chair. On the consultation and the public participation, I think it's very clear that it has to be meaningful. That comment it's well taken from our side in terms of the development of the different regulations. On the emphasis on the how should we expeditiously develop the regulations, indeed, that is well taken, and that will be done as open and transparent as possible, as indicated. With those few comments, Honorable Chair, let me ask Mr. Govesa just to really touch on the summary of comments, but again emphasizing that we are considering all the comments from this province and all other provinces in a more detailed, so that we would engage very closely with the state law advisors, engage closely with the team, legal team from Parliament, to then agree on which areas are warranting amendments and what adjustment would therefore have to be carried out. Through you, Honorable Chair, if you may allow Mr. Govesa to come back on quickly on the summary based on the looking at the comments that we have received.
Thank you, Mr. Gemaru. Mr. Kubesi, would you be able to join that matrix onto our screens?
Yes, I'm trying to project the summary. But from the previous presentation from Project 90 by 23, no, in the matrix, the matters are, it's quite detailed. It runs into, I think, 40, 50 pages. We thought that we would then focus on just on this summary. But then if members feel that in this summary there's issues that we've missed, then they can highlight those so that we respond quickly to those.
Thank you. I appreciate that you've made the summary. Let's first deal then with the summary, and then obviously members are welcome to, if they've got additional questions, to then respond.
Yes, no, thank you, Chair. In terms of the summary, Chair, as I said, we extracted the summary, discussed it with the state law advisor and the parliamentary legal advisors. So in terms of the terminology, OCSLA means the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor. OSPLA, Office of the State Parliamentary Legal Advisor. So this is just to confirm that these responses were discussed with them and they've made their inputs. Chair, in terms of the first comment we thought we should highlight here is the comment that there's incorrect referencing in the bill. In certain clauses of the bill, for example, the preamble, the word constitutional needs to be in small caps. And some of the paragraphs are not coherent and need to be revised. I think we considered that point. In terms of the last column, you will see that we're stating that the word constitutional should be in small caps, and that paragraph highlighted there should be revised accordingly. Then in terms of the second point that was raised was the use of the term periodically in certain clauses of the bill. The proposal was that we rather prescribe specific timeframes. We've noted that submission and acknowledged that the word periodically is used in certain clauses, in particular clauses 16.2, 17.3, 21 or 21.4b. There's also one which is reflected when we go further down in this summary. But with this proposal, Chair, we emphasizing that if you look at the bill, we have as much as possible, or to the greatest extent possible, attempted to prescribe the timeframes where that is necessary. And in these specific instances where we're using the wording periodically, it is intended. And our understanding is that in industry will understand the meaning of that wording, as that wording is also used in the National Environmental Management Act within this context. So the response here is that in respect of these specific provisions or clauses, we are aligning with the NEMA wording, and our understanding is that the industry that we interact with is generally conversant of what that term means within the context that it is used in those specific clauses. So our response, Chair, is that in respect of these specific clauses, we'll propose that the wording periodically be retained. The next proposal was that we change the symbol, is it CO2e, carbon dioxide equivalent, to CO2e to CO2e small, I would say small cap. We acknowledge that submission, we accept that change, so it will be effected in the relevant clause of the bill. Then with the definition of mayor, there was a comment on that to say that definition is not really correctly captured and aligned with the Municipal Structures Act. We support that point. It's a valid point. And in fact, the reason is that inconsistency or misalignment is because of amendments to the Municipal Structures Act, which were made after the bill had been certified by the State Office of the Chief State Law Advisor. But the inconsistencies are acknowledged. As a result, the definition of the term mayor will be updated and aligned with the amended Municipal Structures Act. So the comment was accurate, was on point. That will be corrected. The other comment was around the Presidential Climate Commission, to say the clause 10 provides for continued existence of the commission. Therefore, the definition must be updated accordingly and not refer to establishment of the commission in terms of clause 10. We acknowledge that a submission, Chair, as well, and commit that definition must be updated. It must say the commission contemplated in clause 10. So again here, the input was correct. The bill will be updated accordingly. And I think this is on the principles, clause 3H. The change from the use of the word should to must. That we accept as well. That change will be effected to make sure that the Act uses more peremptory wording. On clauses 4, subclause 3 and 4, we also acknowledge that the insertion there of clause 4, 3 and 4 is indeed misplaced. That insertion belongs elsewhere. Our view is that it should be moved to clause 13. It will be properly located there. This was, we're quite aware of this misplacement, but then we're just constrained when we're processing the bill in the portfolio committee, because when you are developing an A list, you are then constrained in terms of the nature of amendments that you can make. the state law advisors said that that kind of amendment was not possible at that stage. But then they have now advised that since the bill is now in the legislatures, we are free to then move the provision and locate it where it should be. So that submission is accepted. Clause 434 will then move to clause 13. We propose, Chair. Then, with respect to the reference to the President's Coordinating Council, the use of a dash in that name, we advised that the dash is not necessary. In fact, inserting a dash is not grammatically correct and not consistent with drafting convention. So the proposal is that the definition without the dash the reference without the dash should remain. The mistake may have been in the other act, but then it doesn't mean that if there is a mistake there, we should duplicate it here in this bill. The state law advisors have confirmed that the dash is not in accordance with drafting convention. Then clause 93A, I think there is a grammatical error there where we're using its instead of the. So we note that, we acknowledge then that will be corrected and amendments will be made. Then clause 10, I think there is also just about phrasing of the representation of the members of the commission. But then we acknowledge that maybe we can change the word including and phrase it differently. I think here I've addressed the aspect of the wording periodically. So I won't repeat it here. On clause 22 4C, it was said that the wording there is not clear. It's not clear whether it refers to 5-yearly increments or not. We've quoted clause 22 4C says sectoral emission targets must include quantitative and qualitative greenhouse gas emission reduction goals for the first 5 years, the subsequent 5 to 10 years, and for 10 to 15-year period thereafter. So we've discussed this internally, and we appreciate the confusion that may be created by how we've drafted that clause. So the commitment we're making is that we will revisit clause 22 4C and see how we can craft it better for clarity and regulatory certainty. On clause 22 7F, here we've looked at that proposal, we've consulted with the state law advisor. Their view is that that wording is properly located, and therefore the wording "the" must remain within clause 22 7F. Clause 22 11 and 12 reference to the presidency, that we accept as a grammatical or editorial change that must be made. So, Chair, our proposal is that the presidency must be revised and the word there be in small caps. It was just an editorial oversight. On clause 23, here, I think this is also about the timeframes. Here on this one, Chair, we acknowledge that the clause 23 lacks timeframes. We will then go back to the drawing board and see and make an assessment whether those are necessary, and if so, then what types of timeframes we can factor in in clause 23. On clause 22.4, we note that submission, but our view is that that wording amongst others is not really superfluous. It just indicates that that is not a closed list, but we'll then consider maybe using alternative wording, for example, but not limited to, if that will be acceptable to the committee. Chair, I think there were quite a few comments around the cross-referencing and incorrect or inaccurate cross-referencing, and we acknowledge all those submissions. We've looked at the bill, and I think we can concede that some of the references are not really accurate, and that must be corrected. So we'll work together with the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor and the Parliamentary Legal Advisor to just comb through the bill, read each clause, and where there is referencing, we'll double check and make sure that all the cross references are correct. But so far, the submissions in relation to the incorrect referencing, the submissions are correct, and that is acknowledged and will be addressed. So that applies to clause 24, clause 29 is highlighted there. On clause 30, with the delegations, the whole intention of clause 30, Chair, was to ensure that delegations in terms of the bill or the act once it is enacted are processed in terms of section 42 of NEMA. So we acknowledge that that clause may not be entirely clear, so we will go back and redraft it and see and ensure that it is fully aligned with with section 42 of NEMA. The state law advisors was suggested wording to say clause 30 may be amended to insert the words in terms of this act after the words vested in him or her. Maybe that will solve the problem, but overall, Chair, we acknowledge that we need to look at clause 30 closely and ensure that it's fully aligned with section 42 of NEMA. On clause, on schedule 1, the submission was that the functionaries listed there must be in alphabetical order, but the state law advisor says, no, that's not really a legal requirement or drafting requirement. The manner in which that schedule was drafted was intentional. It was drafted that way intentionally. So their view, the state law advisor's view, is that no, that is not really necessary to put those functionaries in an alphabetical order. Same applies to Schedule 2, that we just, it's not really an inherent requirement, and we should keep it as it is. But I think we may consider then the submission relating to addition of the minerals or the mining function under Schedule 2, because it's currently not covered there. Then on the draft Schedule 3, the comment there was that must delete or. It was saying it can't remain a paragraph G, as that is no longer the second to last paragraph in that definition. That we've noted, but after consultations with the state law advisor, they were saying no, it's neither here nor there. But I think in the end, we resolve that or can be deleted as well, just to make sure that the committee's inputs are addressed. So the word or will be deleted, Chair. So these are just some of the comments that we've noted, acknowledged, and believe that will then assist us in improving the content of the bill. So all these comments, Chair, will be taken into account. I think I should end it here, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kubesi, and thank you very much for that summary and also for your willingness to then also look at potential amendments and improvements. I think we must really thank the members of the public which made these submissions and which went through the legislation with a fine comb. May I just ask or just acknowledge also the presence of some other people that made written submissions. My attention has been drawn to the presence of Mr. James Lister from Green Pop and Ms. Belinda Petrie, the CEO of One World. Thank you very much also for your written submissions. We will definitely take a careful look at them as well. Then I also noted earlier Mr. Schalk Karstens also had his hand raised. Mr. Karstens, would you like to make a submission or just a comment on what we've heard?
Yes, Chair. I see there's already representation from the Western Cape, HOD, Gerber, as well as Karen Shippey, Chief Director. All that I'm concerned about is the relationship or the way that disaster management and the climate change bill is going to, in future, work to be implemented, because there's quite a difference between definitions within the climate change and in the disaster management legislation. And also the climate change bill doesn't speak to all the disaster management hazards. If you look at the climate change implementation, there's already then also representation to the president where disaster management is now only being recognized to be part of COCTA, Department of Cooperative Governments and Regional Affairs. That is a big concern for me as a professional disaster manager. As soon as climate change is now heightened to a higher level, or increased the concern to a higher level, disaster management as such will not be implemented and also not recognized and funded as it need to be. Because if at the ultimate end of climate change, if things go wrong, it will become a disaster that we see. Disaster management, risk reduction, we do whatever is necessary as far as possible, as well as then the disaster management preparedness, response and recovery. We need to declare disasters and the necessary funding has to be provided. I think one of the previous speakers spoke to a fire incident and how they were actually been affected by that. I don't see my colleagues from the National Disaster Management Centre, because I was under the impression that they would have provided the input, and as well as the Professional Institute, the Disaster Management Institute of Southern Africa, that they would have provided the input. I'm a little bit worried about them not being part of this process, but I just want to register the concern that there's quite a problem with the correlation between climate change and disaster management. I can just make an example. How does seismic events fits into climate change? How do hazardous material events fits into climate change, aircraft disasters? So I can continue. So most of the hazards that we experience in disasters are really recognized to be climate change from a climate change perspective, but there's just as much other hazards that's not been now been included within this act. So that is just a comment from my side. Hopefully that doesn't derail the whole process, But I'm just very concerned, and I'm nearly I'm on retirement. I'm going to retire in 2 months' time. So I just thought I just need to mention it. Thanks a lot, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Carstens, and it is always good to hear from a seasoned official. So thank you very much for that. Honourable members, guests, thank you very much. Are there any questions at this point to the department or to any of those that presented to us here today? Please, if so, raise your hands. I do not see any responses. Honourable members, the matrix has been, or the full matrix, has been circulated to all members. I do know that some of the documentation we only received some 2 hours before the start of this meeting. We are scheduled to again meet tomorrow morning at 9 to deliberate on the mandate that we must give to the NCOP. But obviously what we can finalize and what guidance we can give to our procedural officer today will just, I think, speed up the processes and make our work going forward easier. In the absence of any hands that currently, may I then propose that we then align ourselves with those aspects that the department has just indicated that they've run by the legal advisors, and where they have acceded to the fact that some of those, may I call it grammatical and language phrases may be improved, and that we don't need to discuss that one by one. That would already remove a number of the clauses that have been commented on, and where the comments have been acceded to by the National Department. I recognize the hand of the Honourable America. I did see quickly the hand of the Honourable Maran as well. Can we then first go to the Honourable America and then Maran?
Chairperson, I just wanted to know, and I want to thank the presenters for the input, whether we as a committee need to make the decisions now in the presence of all the officials as to our way forward. Aren't we perhaps being put in a position where we agree to things now, and come tomorrow we differ with each other in terms of how we want to this whole particular process to unfold? Because I'm just concerned that and I don't want to express my concerns in the presence of all the officials that's present on the platform, and perhaps we need to keep due consideration for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable America. Honourable Maran.
Thanks, Chairperson, and my apologies for joining this meeting late. Good afternoon to yourself and all others present. Similar concern, Chair. This meeting is supposed to end at 5. I got another meeting tomorrow. So mine will also be, if it's possible, to express a view, Chair, on this particular bill. Still in this particular meeting, I will really appreciate that. Also, thanks for the presenters presenting and putting their issues forward. Thanks.
Good, thank you. Thank you very, very much, honourable members. Honourable members, obviously all our meetings are open meetings, But I do hear the concern of the Honourable America that we might now be taking up valuable time from the officials. I just don't want to, proceed and give them an opportunity to exit this meeting if we are still going to need their expert advice. So I do not see any hands. And as I've said, I think just to make things easier for ourselves and for our procedural officer, unless you've, been alerted to other grammatical or language, aspects which you believe might be improvements, that we accept the ones which the department will accept as part of our negotiating mandate, so that it just gets carried into the NCOP that way. We are also almost, for 3 hours we've been going. 2 hours, and it has been my practice in the past, also as a former speaker. I believe 2 hours are normally the limit for people, after which they would like just to have a short break. But before we say goodbye to the officials, may I just ask, please, as a last opportunity, are there any questions from your side that you would like to pose to the officials? Aspects raised, aspects perhaps raised in the matrix of submissions, where you would like some more clarity on the response that we've received from the department. The Honourable America, I saw your hand was raised and then lowered. Perhaps if you could just give us an indication whether there are any other aspects that you would like to raise while we still have the benefit of the officials that have worked so closely with this legislation.
No, Chairperson, I think I'll raise the issues within the committee itself, because my and maybe I might as well just raise it. I don't know, and I think the department's official didn't fully answer the question in terms of process, in terms of where we are with this bill, given the truncated timelines that we have, and whether us merely having, advertised in the manner in which we did to solicit comments in the bill, would that be considered as sufficient, public consultation in terms of the content of the bill? I just perhaps need clarity around that, because, it may not, it may be another window of opportunity, perhaps in the 7th Parliament, to explore further consultation with various stakeholders. I just need clarity around that, whether, because we haven't done any public hearings, for example, whether the absence of that would be considered as sufficient public participation in our deliberations. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you. Thank you for raising that question. Obviously, I have my views, and we have widely invited people for comments, but that is a legal question which I would gladly leave open or leave over to our legal advisors that we have with us. And I don't know if our advocate from the Western Cape would like to be first to respond to that. Mr. Kobesi, I recognize your hand. May I just say, it does, arrive a little bit awkward when the legal advisors say, yes, we kind of acknowledge that there would be certain improvements possible, but that this would require a deeper cut or a deeper review or revision of the legislation in the A list, and that time is against us, and therefore we believe we should not go that way now. And I think that is also what the Honourable America alluded to, that, now there are these severe time constraints, and we are being put in a very difficult position where we must say, must we now support a piece of legislation where we believe, there may be some major improvements possible, or must we, just tinker and make a few smaller changes in order to get this through in 2024? Because if this has to stand over for the next parliament, it might take a matter of months, if not years, before it again is referred to provinces and the NCOP. And Mr. Kobesi, your hand was raised.
No, thank you, Chair. Maybe I must reserve my comment, but because I thought the question was directed to us, but then I am realizing that the process now is owned by the NCOP. Ours is to support the NCOP and the legislatures. So I think we are not really better placed to advise on the process. Maybe the committee's legal advisor is better placed to advise. Thank you.
Indeed, yes, thank you. Thank you. Advocate Marsdorp, you've heard, we've advertised widely, we have invited widely, we have received a lot of, there was a very good response if we compare this to a number of other pieces of legislation that we've dealt with recently. But we have not had public hearings in various places in the Western Cape. Would you be concerned that we might be found lacking in terms of our responses then to the NCOP?
Chairperson, I would have preferred to defer this issue to my colleague, Ms. Niekerk, because I wouldn't want to stray into the procedural realm. But if you want me to express a view, there would certainly be a concern if the engagement, if the facilitation of involvement wasn't as sufficiently widespread as we should have or even could have had. There will certainly be a frowning upon that, Chairperson.
Okay, good. So it's not a clear yes or no, which I accept and understand. Good. Honourable members, can we just come back to the opportunity that we now have to put questions to those that made oral submissions that are still with us in the meeting, or also our national colleagues there from National Department of Agriculture. Would you just indicate by raise of hands if you wish still to ask a question to them? If not, I'm going to excuse them from this meeting. I'm going to allow for a 10-minute break, and then we can return in terms of the way, discussing the way forward and what should happen between today and tomorrow morning when we meet again. I do not see any hands at this point in time. And with that, I would like then, sorry, Mr. Gramaru.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that tomorrow we are not expected to be partaking. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Correct. That's why I say this is our last opportunity, and that's why I've been asking repeatedly that people, should they want to engage with you, this is now the last opportunity that they would have before formulating our negotiating mandate to the NCOP. Okay. So in the absence of any hands, I want to say thank you very much to Project 90, to Ms. Lucinda Jeftas, Mr. Claassen, both you and Ms. Jeftas really added value to our discussion. Thank you very much also to the officials from the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment's response. My apologies if I've if I've allocated to you to a wrong national department. Thank you very much. Thank you for the work that you've done in first drafting and for the public participation, that the processes and input that you've received in drafting the bill as we have it in front of us. We wish you everything of the best, and again, thank you very much. Join us here in the southernmost tip of Africa, but thank you, and we wish you everything of the best with your work, particularly those of you that are directly involved with this very, very important issue of climate change and the effects that it will have, as Mr. Carstens and others like Ms. Jeftas pointed out to us today. Colleagues, this is now 5 minutes past 3. May I ask that we rejoin at 3:15, just to discuss the way forward and see what progress we can make today in the time that is still left for this meeting. Thank you very much. This meeting is then temporarily suspended. Turning to this meeting, I've received an apology from the Honourable Murray, who needs to deal with something personal that came up just now. Honourable members, I want to propose a way forward and put that to you. The first one is that, normally the submission that we've received today, we would have received in November already. And that unfortunately then didn't happen, which put us under a tremendous amount of pressure to go forward. And I'm grateful that we already at the stage where we have advertised and received comments, etc. And where we've even received oral submissions today by those that responded to our invitation. We've got two options. The first one is that we've now received, can I call it the full matrix? Earlier today, it was distributed less than 2 hours before our meeting. It's a 41-page document. We can either go through that document together, or we can use the hour and a half that is remaining that was set aside for us individually to look at that document, to perhaps highlight those lines where we believe discussion is required, or the aspects that we believe should be contained in our negotiating mandate to go forward. And that will hopefully save time then in tomorrow's meeting, if we've been able to do our homework, so to say, by going through that document. Some of the aspects, it seems to me, are, as I've said, grammatical, wording, language related, etc. And it seems to me as if the department is accepting of those. And obviously, as I've said just before the break, let's not spend time on that. Let's just include that in our eventual negotiating mandate. Before I give you an opportunity to respond to that proposal, may I just ask Ms. Niekerk to come in here just for her views, but also just to share with us, again, the timeline of the NCOP, because I did notice that there were some reservations as to the pressures that we are being put under, the timelines of the NCOP, etc. Ms. Niekerk?
Thank you, Chairperson. The due date for negotiating mandate on the climate change bill is I would say the 25th of March. The NCOP Select Committee is meeting on the 26th of March to consider negotiating mandates of provinces. So we obviously have to wait for the outcome of the negotiating mandate meeting before this committee can then submit a final mandate. And the date that was sent through when the NCOP Select Committee will be considering final mandates on the climate change bill is the 16th of April. Now, Chairperson, I know it's a challenge because between the 26th of March and the 16th of April is a constituency period, but I think the two of us can have a chat and see how we can comply to get our final mandate in on time.
May I just ask Ms. Niekerk, that timeline, when was that distributed or shared with us? Was that before the announcement of the election date or thereafter?
Before the announcement of the election date, Chair, that I can say with confidence. I think the exact date, maybe Mr. Cleopas can assist. I'm not quite sure when we'd actually received the program from the NCOP Select Committee.
Honourable members, I think you, together with me, we read between the lines, and we do know that timelines that were planned may be affected by the fact that we now know when the election is going to be. So these are, possible timelines, may I say, under review, or they may be adopted. They may change. The thing that I just want is, should the NCOP wish to proceed with this bill in this current term, that the Western Cape's voice must be heard there, and we must be able to submit. Okay, so with that, we're back to my proposal that we go through the matrix individually, and then tomorrow morning just concentrate on those aspects that every member has marked as, can I call it, noticeable, or something to discuss, something to raise in our mandate to the NCOP. You will see that on the program, negotiating mandate is not yet, mentioned there, but I do believe, if we can get ahead of the curve, taking into account the severe time pressures that we may be under, that it will stand us in good stead going forward. Any other views on whether you want to continue now with that matrix, or as a committee, or whether you're happy to continue individually? Thank you, Honourable America. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairperson. I fully concur with your view that we continue tomorrow. I'm also from experience that we have that regardless of our mandate, if often what we propose are very seldom incorporated into a revised bill, and given the time frames, I am very doubtful that tight time frames. I'm very doubtful that other than the obvious grammatical corrections that need to be made, any substantive changes will be brought about. But we nonetheless need to put those proposals on the table, and as part of our comprehensive negotiating mandate. What the NCOP does with it, that's out of our control. And therefore, I would agree that when we look at the matrix and consider our input into the negotiating mandate, that it need to be as comprehensive as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable America. Honourable Maran.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm not sure what your decision will be on the proposal made by the Honourable America, but if the decision is that we're not going to continue with the matrix today, I just want to register my apology for tomorrow's meeting, as I've indicated earlier. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Maran. Would there be an alternate standing in for you tomorrow?
Both my alternates is on step aside.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you very much. We understand.
But I will try, Chair, because I've seen in the Standing Committee of Infrastructure that Member Lilly have indicated that he will attend a meeting, so I will check with him whether it's possible for him to stand in for the meeting of tomorrow morning. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. And then, Honourable Maran, I appreciate you giving us the heads up in advance. I can just indicate that I sincerely do hope that tomorrow morning we will be able to deal with the full matrix within the time allocated, and even perhaps within an hour and a half to 2 hours. Good. So, honourable members, with that, let's then step over to the next item, which is resolutions, actions. Are there anything that you would like to raise, perhaps apart from our work that we've got cut out for ourselves tonight? If not, under general, any aspects there? Good, honourable members. Then it seems to me it is appropriate for me to now close this meeting, and we will then be seeing each other tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much in advance for going through the document. I see it's fortunately in an editable format in Microsoft Word. So hopefully you would be able to make some notes and highlight those aspects which you would like to raise for inclusion, possible inclusion in a negotiating mandate going forward. Ms. Nikak, are there any aspects, any issues that you would like to raise before this meeting is adjourned?
Not at this stage, Chair, but if you would like me to comment on the public participation that was deferred back to me by Advocate Marstorp, I shall certainly do so. If members are comfortable, it's fine. Thank you.
Are you ready to respond now, or would you also like first to liaise?
No, that's fine, Chairperson. I'm able to respond in terms of public participation. Just to bring it to members' attention, that as Chair said previously, the extent of public participation is usually decided on after the committee has received a briefing on the bill. In this case, it was done ahead of receiving the briefing on the bill. But just so that members are comfortable in terms of the public participation that this committee has decided to undertake, I would just like to bring your attention to Section 1181 of the Constitution, and that stipulates that a provincial legislature must facilitate public involvement in the legislative and other processes of the legislature and its committee. So there is thus an obligation on the legislature to facilitate public involvement in the lawmaking process. However, the extent to which this constitutional obligation must be fulfilled is left to the discretion of the provincial legislature. I'd also like to bring to the committee's attention that determining factors for public participation include the nature and importance of the legislation, the intensity and impact on the public, the time and expense of conducting public hearings, and lastly, what did Parliament or provincial legislature consider to be appropriate public involvement in the light of the legislation's content, importance, and urgency? So these factors should be very clear to the committee after the briefing. In terms of the climate change bill, the committee decided that it would advertise in print media and social media, as was explained by the chairperson, with a closing date, an extended closing date that ran for more than a month of 5 February 2024. However, this doesn't exclude a decision that the committee might take to hold public hearings, but I must emphasize that public participation is not having a public hearing alone. Public hearings is a form of public participation. So I would just like to leave that with the committee, and the committee's resolution at the time of the briefing was that it would consider the interest, the number of submissions received before it decides if further public participation is necessary. So, Chair, I just want to leave that with the committee in terms of the question around public participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the period for responses or public participation ran from the beginning of December to the 5th of February, you said?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Okay, so there was quite a wide window. I think, honourable members, what we must say to one another is that this bill, and particularly the topic of this bill, is definitely a very important one, which affects not only a select number of entities or persons, but the public at large. And in that respect, I think the urgency of this is also for me very important. As I've said, I fear that now that the date of the election has been announced, that that some pieces of legislation may fall by the wayside, but definitely this one, I think everybody will do their utmost to finalize this one before the elections. Ms. Nikak, perhaps because there were some schedules circulated for this week for agriculture and for other committees, and there may be some changes to that. The only other meeting scheduled for the Standing Committee on Agriculture and Environmental Affairs is the one for tomorrow at 9 o'clock this week. Am I correct?
That is correct, Chairperson. Initially, we had a briefing on the 29th, scheduled for on the Preservation and Development of Agricultural Land Bill. But if members just recall, in the last meeting, it was decided that the chairperson writes to the Select Committee requesting clarity in terms of the program for that bill. So that meeting falls off. So it's just tomorrow's meeting. And then our next meeting after that would be to consider the budget votes for agriculture and environmental affairs and development planning. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. And on that note, honourable members, I wish you well. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. The Honourable Maran's apology is noted. And I have a great evening. And thank you in advance for coming to tomorrow's meeting well prepared. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Everyone, have a nice day.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.